Hi everyone, I'm John Espino from The Young Folks, and I'm here today with Azazel Jacobs to talk about his upcoming film, The Lovers. So it was refreshing to see your new take on romantic comedy, something that's kind of been almost formulaic recently with different films. And you used a lot of elements from like rom-coms from the 40s and 50s. So did any specific ones inspire you?
Wow, there wasn't a specific one, to be honest, but there was this idea. There was an idea for me generally to think of like what happens after a lot of those movies end. Like I wanted this movie to begin when a lot of those films came to an end.
Yeah, that's one of the things I wrote down. It felt like almost like a sequel, like a "Where Are They Now" look.
Exactly, and I've always been curious when you end those movies and you're kind of on this high note and they're just kind of, just walking off and there's just this craziness that's settled and they're kissing each other and maybe William Powell walks out with a baby carriage and little dogs and you go, great, happily ever after. And then I end and I go, what happened after that? And especially, now when we finish a film so much, we look up on our phones, well, what happened to this director? What happened to these actors? And it's such another part of the story that we want to know, So I think that it's both those things that I was hoping for, but not a specific film, but like having a communication with those movies.
So is that what inspired the story for you, or do you have any personal experience with like divorce or know any couples that were in that similar situation?
Well, me personally, this is not my story nor my parents' story, though I've definitely been in relationships that have had, their own troubles and I can relate to the experiences that they go through. And I think most people have had at least some relationships that kind of can get ugly or far away or distant or strange or terrible, whatever it is.
Comfortable.
Exactly. Ultimately comfortable because of becoming too comfortable and just finding that. So, but I definitely do know that it was sparked from just this feeling, from a few feelings, but I'll kind of go through all of them, which is, one of them was just kind of hitting an age where a lot of people were breaking up around me, and that was troubling for me, and I wanted to be at peace with this idea that this couple's their love was real, and this was some kind of way of like coming to an idea, like thinking that love was real, whether they're together or not, that it was carrying on with me, and maybe it would kind of wander back to them in a physical way or just in like this kind of fantastical ghostly way. The other thing too was right before writing this script, a person that this film is dedicated to, Gil Dennis, who was first my teacher at AFI and then became a collaborator, mentor, and then close friend, suddenly passed away. And I felt like it took the foundation out from underneath me. He was somebody that I spoke to on a constant basis for guidance, just in life and in terms of and movie making. He was a writer. He wrote Walk the Line. It's probably his most notable credit. But without this base and having this conversation between us suddenly interrupted, it made me search for a story that I felt like was something that he would enjoy and I could hear him respond to while I was writing. And so I see this as a way of keeping that conversation going. And then lastly, in the midst of writing, while I was writing this, my dog of 16 years, who I had since she was basically a baby, was passing away. And I think, again, that foundation, like the most true love, the most true love, most constant love, the one love that stayed exactly the same from the beginning of my time with her to the end, disappearing. In some ways, this was a celebration of that.
Yeah, it definitely fueled the film, just kind of about closure, about ending, because the whole film felt like there was always that potential that they could get back together, but they knew ultimately it had to come to an end.
Or, I still this maybe totally on my own right now, but I still see them together. I see everybody.
Yeah.
I just see everybody getting a bit of what they want at the end of the film. I mean, I feel like, and that's as much as we can hope for. Like, and especially with movies, I feel like if there was any other ending, while there could be something that could be more, I don't know, whatever it is at the end, I feel like you could walk away and think ultimately, but that's not possible. That just couldn't be possible.
It's too neat.
Yeah, and that's not, and then you question everything that came before it.
Yeah. So do you think there was kind of a generational message in there? You know, because they were probably together, you know, back when marriage was more something you did for, you know, livelihood, not so much for love.
Well, that's interesting. I don't think of it as somebody that got married on my 10th anniversary. Like, I don't see it as something that it's marriage that's made this the situation. I think of them as a couple that made the right choices. That they went to a town where the school was good and the home was safe and it was affordable and the neighborhood was safe. I feel like, and they got jobs that maybe not interesting jobs, but they got serious. They got real about life. And I think that that's something that I understand. That's something that I've wanted as somebody that's works freelance. The idea of something consistent, something that you can depend on, whether it's not just a relationship but within your own life. That's something I've been in awe of as a person who's feels like, oh, I can pay my rent right now, but I really don't know when this is gonna end. It could end any day. Like that. Yeah. That security is something I'm in awe of, and I also could see how something like this could potentially happen.
So there was like a little subplot which I enjoyed, was almost the son trying not to commit the same sins as the father. Does that speak personally to you at all?
It doesn't speak personally to me because my parents are still together and they've been a good example of love. But I do connect to the son with that feeling of just going like, I just remember that feeling of, wow, so to function in this world, we just have to accept a certain amount of not truths. Like there's certain things that we're not supposed to say to each other, and there's certain things that are being said to us that are not exactly, or sometimes at all, what's actually happening. That this is, and I remember that kind of frustration. There's something, I've learned how to come to peace. I'm functioning in the world. To function in this world, you kind of got to get used to the amount of things you shouldn't say, or just the amount of things you shouldn't trust. But I relate to the fact, the idea, I'm kind of in awe of somebody that still is just not willing, like, yes, I'm going to live in this world, but I'm not going to accept this as normal, the amount of bullshit.
Yeah. So after watching the film, I can't see anybody else besides Deborah Winger and Tracy Letts playing the leads.
That's great.
So how did you know that, first individually, that they would be great for the roles, but also that their chemistry would ignite like that?
I did not know. I mean, this is these things that you hope for, and I also cannot picture anybody else. I did write with the hopes of Deborah Winger in mind. She was somebody that had seen a previous film of mine, Terry, in 2011, and met me after Q&A and expressed real care for the movie. And then she wound up writing me a letter a couple months later and just saying, hey, I'd like to make something with you. And I started going to her with different projects throughout the years, and nothing sunk up with what exactly she wanted to do. So to the point that when I was sitting down writing this script, The Lovers, I had her in mind. I had hopes for her, but there was definitely no guarantee. But the minute that she said yes, I felt extremely sure that the actors that would follow would be the right actors. The people that were up for this film, I felt like I was throwing down an axe and saying, this is the type of movie. I'm not chasing an actor hot, a certain type of actor that everybody's chasing in this way that you can kind of see. I'm trying to do something else. I'm trying to work with people that are still hungry, who maybe haven't had a chance to kind of prove themselves in this way, though they've proven themselves so much way beyond myself. And that's how Tracy, when I expressed exactly what I said to you, to my casting director, she brought up Tracy Letts as being somebody that she felt like, he's proven everything on the stage, but he seems to be getting cast a lot in a similar role, and I think he could be open for, he may want to play somebody else, and that turned out to be the case.
So music, my favorite part of the film was the kind of the score that you use that juxtaposed the actual situations. And you've also worked on Mozart in the Jungle.
Yes, that's true. And I'm working again on Mozart in the Jungle. I mean, music for me is, one of my first loves, really is one of my first loves, is that, I had the luck of having an older sister, Nisi, who brought me to see The Clash in 1982 when I was 9 years old. And my parents said I came back a completely different kid. I really saw something. I saw a band and I heard a music that spoke directly to my bones. And this is still kind of my foundation, and I write to music. Music, that's just the way that, this it's kind of how my heart beats. So in this case, with this film, the music was not something I thought of, or what type of music, until after the film was cut. Mm-hmm. But I've been working with a composer, Mandy Hoffman, now for many, many years, and it's a key part of telling a story for me, as much as it's a key part of forming me as a person.
No, yeah, it was actually really perfect. It almost seems like you already had that music in mind as you were directing it.
Well, I had the films that had that type of music in mind, when I was working on it. But I really did not think I was going to wind up with this music until I started thinking, God, that could be, when I was in the middle of the edit, and Darren Navarro and I tried some of these songs from these classic movies over these parts, and we saw that clash. We saw the clash there, we saw this spark and this contrast and this chance of telling a history of these characters, what they may have felt like at one point, and connected to these inspirations. That's when suddenly there was sparks, and it really, I think, hopefully accentuates the kind of chemistry between Michael and Mary.
Like effortless chemistry. Like they could, along with the scoring, could just make the audience laugh with an expression. You could just tell so much just by looking at them.
But it is effort. That's the amazing thing.
Yeah,
it's like that. This is not something where, they just, oh, cool. Luckily we have chemistry. They created chemistry. They met each other halfway. They challenged each other. They pushed each other to connect with each other.
Kind of like marriage.
Yes, that's exactly like marriage.
So you told us about Mozart in the Jungle coming up. Any other films or TV shows?
Well, there's always, this story for the lovers is like this in terms of a premise. Like I have different ideas that I'm always carrying around and wondering which one will kind of become the next thing. So right now I'm still just hearing your response to this film makes me, this is the first time I'm hearing, and I just saw it with an audience for the first time last week. And so I'm still finding out what this movie is, and my hopes for whatever I do next is to do something very different than whatever I just did. Like that's just the way that I try to work, is to go, okay, where have I not gone? With Mozart in the Jungle, it's somebody else's show, and it's somebody else's world, and it's something that I've just been loving visiting. Like there's amazing people, not only in front of the camera, but behind that camera, in that production, and it feels like a totally different new world for me. So that's what I'm going to keep searching for.
And which one do you prefer? You've done both film and television. Obviously one's a longer format. Storytelling wise, which do you prefer? Both?
Yeah, I really like them both. I think that they both kind of offer something very, very different to each other. There's a certain amount of space and time that TV lends itself well, because you have so many more chapters, which is something that I try to bring into films. So I'm not trying to just rush to the end. Here's the point of this movie. We're going to get to it right as quickly as possible. So that's something that I can really explore in TV. And in TV, I get a chance, in movies, I get the sense of this containment of being able to tell one piece of a story without the idea of thinking like, well, what if I get a chance to make this go on? How would this go on?
Worrying about next season.
Yeah, exactly. I like the limitations that movies have to offer. I like that you have, here's my time, I get this next hour and a half or whatever it is, and I'm gonna just do my best to say my piece, and that's all you're gonna get.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.